So just to give a quick preface, so John asked me to run this mini training. I think of it more of just sort of a Q&A, really, with a brief introduction. Really, the point is to give you guys a high-level insight into what Google Ads is intended to be used for lead generation, and the best-in-class practices that we see work extremely well across all types of lead gen clients that we work with. So everything that I'm going to talk about here today is stuff that Google obviously has built for lead generation, but I'm not talking about it just because Google created it. I'm also talking about it because these strategies are vetted and tested across thousands of clients, and we know that they work. I think one important thing, just to kick things off, is lead generation is a little bit trickier, admittedly, than retail. The consumer journey can often be more complex, and it does require a little bit more manual input from either the client or the consultants who are helping the client qualify leads. So just want to kick things off because that manual input, while we'll be talking about a lot of the cool automated features that Google is bringing to the market, that human input really is still needed. And we see that as a key input from partners, as John's team is doing the very technical back end of optimizing and trying to decrease the cost per click and the cost per acquisition. He can do his job better for you and for your clients with that degree of input that's necessary to drive really strong lead gen performance. So I would like to kick off with that because we're talking about automation, and people often have preconceived notions about machine learning and the robots taking over the world. This is just one side of the equation, and the human element is still a very necessary side of that overall picture. So I'll kick it off. And I'm just going to start. There's probably about 20 slides that I'll run through briefly just to set the stage a little bit. But if there are any questions at any point, feel free to jump in, ask me a question. But hopefully at the end, I can answer any more detailed questions that you might have about automation and lead gen as it pertains to Google in general. Cool. So at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is getting the most amount of return for your investment, right? And for lead gen, there can be a wide range of cost per acquisitions, but in my experience and across Google, it's usually more expensive to acquire a high value lead gen customer than it is to acquire someone who's going to buy a $20 t-shirt, right? There's tons and tons of people who are going to buy a $20 t-shirt, but if you are a healthcare client or your software as a sales, the potential return on those types of contracts or bookings is potentially, in the thousands of dollars. So the cost to acquire those customers is usually a bit higher. And again, it requires a little bit more of that human input to help Google learn how most efficiently to spend. So I'm going to walk through a quick example. Hopefully it's not too technical. I tried to keep this as high level as possible. But I wanted to kick it off with an example. So I said that we tested this across thousands and thousands of clients, but we do have lots of case studies that we can share if you're interested, but this is just one. This is an example of a client that went through all of these different processes that I'm going to talk about and saw a significant improvement in the number of leads. The cost per acquisition per customer drastically decreased. And just overall, they grew their business by a lot. So just wanted to give you a quick snapshot that this isn't something, again, that Google is just pushing because we want you guys to spend more on Google Ads. This just actually works, and it does help customers scale their business, and it has thousands of times over. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through the process just so we're all on the same page. So every time there's a Google search, right, there is a pool of potential customers that.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Are you an employee of Google? Do you own an ad agency? I'm not aware of.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have done an intro at the beginning. Yeah, I am a Google employee. I live in Los Angeles and work out of the Playa Vista office. So Webconsuls is part of our premier agency program.
Yeah, I knew they were. Okay, I just didn't know how you plugged in. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, so
it helps me listen better. Okay.
Yeah. So John is one of our premier partners via Webconsuls. So he gets a dedicated team of Google strategists. So we live, breathe, eat Google Ads all day, every day. This is all we talk about. So I work with a wide range of clients, from retail customers who spend in the millions of dollars every quarter to lead gen customers who spend in that same bracket. So I have about 8 years of digital marketing experience before Google. I worked at an agency, multiple agencies, and then also on the brand side, including a very large lead generation automotive company. So yeah, those are my credentials.
I appreciate it. I didn't mean to knock you off stride.
No, not at all. Again, I should have introduced myself. So every time, so this is just how a brief overview of how Google Ads works in the modern era. Every time someone searches something, there's a pool of potential customers that could click on that ad. So Google Ads, and this is where John comes in, is trying to find the customers that are most likely to be the high value customers. But we're sort of starting from that overall pool of people who may be searching generic keywords that are associated with your business. So let's say, you know, they're searching for enterprise software solution. At this stage of the game, they're probably not Googling the brand name specifically. They're doing research on the category. So we want to show up there and try to pull them into the funnel.
Okay.
So out of all of those potential leads, a certain number of those are going to click on an ad. And your client or you yourself are paying every time someone clicks on that ad. So out of all of the potential customers, this is what we associate with click-through rate. So it's basically the number of people who saw the ad divided by, or the number of people who clicked the ad divided by the number of people who saw the ad, and we're paying for each one of those. And at this point, we don't really know if they're going to net out to be a paying customer. We're paying to pull them into that funnel, to get them onto our website so they can learn more about our business. And hopefully they are, one, a high value customer, and two, they are enticed enough by what they see on the ad and the subsequent landing page to submit a lead form or a call or something. So, but right now they just clicked. So out of all of those people who clicked, we have another subset, people who browsed the website but did not take an action. So these are the people we're potentially paying to get to our website, but for whatever reason weren't interested. They clicked on the ad, maybe they read some stuff on the website, and ultimately decided that they didn't find the solution compelling. Okay. These are who we're paying for but aren't converting. This is the category we're trying to decrease as much as possible. We do not want to pay for people who landed on our website and did not take an action like a lead form or call a sales line or something like that. We want to completely reduce that or as much as possible. Okay. So maybe out of those people who did click, there were a subset of people who did complete a lead form or called. And they talked to somebody on the phone, or they submitted a lead form and the sales team looked at their information and they were a low value prospect. So they were a prospect, but maybe they were a low value prospect. And while it's nice to have those people in the funnel interacting with our business, we want people who are worth more. So a good example of this might be, you know, if you offer monthly contracts, you prefer to have someone who's going to sign a 12-month contract versus a 1-month contract. And it, you know, it's still good to have that 1-month contract, but it isn't kind of the ceiling of what we could be getting. So that's this subset. What we're really after is the high value prospects. So out of all the people that clicked the ad, who saw the ad, then clicked it, and then converted via, you know, a lead form or, you know, called your sales line or chatted with your bot or however they're doing that. We want to identify who those high value customers are and basically segment those out and differentiate them between the people who clicked but didn't convert and the people who clicked and converted but maybe were just a low value prospect. So these are the gold standard. This is who we're going after. And there is a way that we can instruct Google to find more of these customers in green and deprioritize the customers in all of the other colors. You with me so far? Awesome. At the end of the day, you paid for all of those clicks. So the way that we're going to grow our business and we're going to improve our lead quality over time is reducing the number of yellow and red people within that box and trying to increase the number of green, because those are the high value customers. So again, we want to pay for clicks that translate to people who converted, but were also high value customers. That's the chain and the thread that we're looking for. So what if there was a way where we could identify who those high value customers are and teach Google Ads to find those customers and repeat the process? So again, when someone searches for a broad term, whether it's online brokers or, software as a service, there are millions of potential people searching for those terms, and hundreds of businesses vying to be the person or the business that captures that click. So there's a lot of people we could be going after, but we want to go after the people who have the highest likelihood of being those high value customers. And the system makes choices about who it thinks will be that high value customer. So our goal is to teach the system who that high value customer is against a low value customer, against someone who didn't even convert at all, so we can limit the spend of the overall system on things that aren't converting. So the way that we do that is mapping the sales journey. Now, this is something, there's a wide range of people that I talk to. Some companies have this down to a science, and there's 50 steps in their sales journey. Some of them have one or two, and some people haven't done it at all. So I'm just going to briefly go over that process so we're all on the same page. Essentially what mapping the sales journey is, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with this, is we're trying to look at the steps that it takes to get from clicking an ad to a closed deal that actually represents revenue for your company. So what we need to do is look at what those steps are and understand the conversion rate or the frequency with which someone goes from a lead, again, that could be a phone call or a form fill or a chat, to a marketing qualified lead. So again, this is just an example, but after they call, maybe they talk to someone on the phone, and that person is vetting and filtering the customer and saying, okay, this is actually a sales qualified lead. This is someone who we want to push further down to this funnel. So you can think of it as a true funnel because the numbers should get smaller and smaller as they're going through that process. So what we're trying to do is figure out, okay, how many people clicked versus submitted some sort of lead? How many people out of the people who submitted the lead became a marketing qualified lead? How many of those people became a sales qualified lead? And how many of those people closed the deal? That is going to help Google Ads become more efficient in figuring out, okay, out of all the people who clicked, what were the attributes of the people who actually closed the deal? Because those are going to represent the kind of archetypes or the personas of people we should go after in the future and become more efficient because we've sort of narrowed in on what those personal attributes are. Still all on the same page? Hey, Jeremy, thanks for joining. Okay, so this is just a visualization, and I like visualizations because I think that it helps understand how Google Ads works. So let's say we have just an online lead. That's maybe 1/4 or 1/5 of the total picture that we want to teach Google Ads. It's an incomplete picture. We know it's a good start, but it's hard to take just the information about online leads and feed that to Google Ads and have it be efficient at finding the closed deals because we haven't given it the full picture yet. Google Ads doesn't know what happens after that online lead is submitted. So we keep trying to fill out the picture, right? So we can track all online leads for the most part through Google Ads automatically via things like pixels and tagging. But once we get past that next stage, we do need some input from whoever is vetting that next step. So we need to figure out, okay, is that the sales team? Who is responsible for telling us whether someone who filled out that lead is a customer worth basically using as an example to send back to Google Ads? So we want to move up this funnel as much as possible. So again, we're trying to get the clearest picture. And the way that Google Ads is going to learn who the ideal customer is filling out all these different steps. And steps 2 through, infinity is probably going to come from either the client or you guys who are working with that initial set of leads to qualify them in some way. So I can't highlight how important that process is. I think it's so important because this is how we improve Google Ads performance and get more efficient. So Google Ads is basically a very complex machine learning algorithm. So even if you know sort of the basics of machine learning, it's basically information in, information out. So it's the algorithm is going to learn what you tell it to do. So let's say in situation 1 on the left, you don't have any sort of tracking for those upper parts of the funnel, that filling out part, the MQLs, SQLs, and leads. Google doesn't even know that it's supposed to be going after those if you're not tracking them. So it's just going to say, okay, we've got our lead tracking that automatically tracks whether it's the phone call or the lead form, and all I have to do is check that box. So Google Ads thinks it's done its job if you don't have any of those deeper events tracked once it gets that lead. So it's going to be like, cool, you told me to get leads. I did my job. Like, there's nothing else we can do. That being said, if you journey map, you basically are telling the system not to stop learning at the lead form. You're basically telling it, okay, yeah, lead form is good, but it's not what I actually want. What I actually want is that full picture, that closed deal customer. Find me more of those. And it basically creates rules that create a feedback loop. So if we can tell Google what that closed deal customer looks like, it basically will take that information and say, okay, next time someone Googles online broker or software as a sale, a platform, let's match that against customers that have already completed the whole closed deal process. And if they do match, let's spend on those people and choose not to spend on people who more closely resemble customers who have clicked but not converted. So it's basically creating spend rules and saying, okay, let's predict based on the customer attributes of this individual person, which is how Google Ad works. It analyzes an individual person, their location, their search history, their email keywords, whatever. Every single time that happens, a search happens, that analyzation is happening. So you want the system in those mini snapshots to basically try to match the customer that it's considering spending for against the customer who has actually gone through the whole process that you have in your database. Does that all make sense? Like, we're really trying to create that feedback loop where your spend is getting more efficient, so Google knows not to spend on a certain customer versus another customer who is our high value. Does that all make sense? Thumbs up. Cool. So again, it's super, super important for Webconsuls partners to have a robust process in the back end for mapping that lead to sale journey, because the more detail that we can give Google and pump that back from our CRM, Salesforce, whatever the case may be, into Google Ads, the system is going to get more efficient, and that feedback loop becomes much more powerful, and again teaches itself over time and gets better and better and better. So these are some of the questions that we encourage people to start asking. Now, I know, mapping that lead to sale journey, making sure that you're qualifying every single lead can be a heavy lift. But I think one thing to think about this process is it actually should make that job easier after you do the initial work. So let's say in this scenario, on the left, you might be sifting through a lot of junk leads, and you might spend a lot of time doing that. If we get to the situation on the right, you should be getting maybe fewer overall leads to sift through, but higher number of quality leads. So again, it can be a bit of an upfront investment in time to go through this process, but it is 100% worth that time investment, and it should return back tenfold once the system gets smarter and smarter. So I guess I'll pause there. Like, with your current customers, your current setup, just looking at these icons and these descriptions, in general, are your customers savvy enough, or do they have the manpower enough to go through this process, to spend the time qualifying those leads and sending them back to Google? And if not, what's the roadblock? Like, what's preventing that from happening? Is it just human man hours? Is it a lack of understanding? Is it a lack of the technology, like maybe the CRM sophistication to do that? Or are your customers in a really good spot, and in general, they understand how this works?
So I'll just jump in there. I guess, just a couple of like initial thoughts. One, it varies both with the parties on the call and just, in general. I'd say overall, like most clients are kind of getting started with it, and, kind of getting familiar with it. And for the most part, there's not a lot of, it's pretty well understood, and, the benefits and stuff like that. I would say with like Joe, basically with some of the franchising clients, I would. It's kind of hard to put my finger on, but I would say maybe the understanding piece of it, which is like Isaac, kind of why I mentioned this, and I'm glad we're recording and stuff too, because that I think it was the yellow people that click but don't convert. I've never kind of incorporated that into the explanation, but I think what you mentioned before about kind of the sci-fi machines taking over type thing, kind of being associated with automation. I think plays into it some, and maybe just underestimating like the value of it or what it will do. Because we definitely want qualified leads. Everybody on this call is to me in an industry that's very similar. A sale is extremely valuable, but there are a high percentage of just tire kickers and people doing research and stuff like that. They're, I don't know, like maybe attorneys or something like that. Like if you Google it, you probably need a lawyer, but like in franchising, behavioral healthcare, stuff like that, there's a lot of bad leads and then some very, very valuable leads. So like a huge in the quality of the lead, which is why I think this would be an excellent fit for them. I actually had a question that I wanted to throw out there actually. So with the kind of like the various stages of the funnel. And I know like ideally we want to map all those, define them, assign values to them. How much like, is it somewhere in between if we give it one other point? Like, because some of the setups right now, are just kind of like good lead, bad lead type, and we can expand on them like later. And, I think we're in a good spot as far as, adhering to all this, but like how much more valuable is it to be like, lead, qualified lead, sale, or just whatever the funnel is versus, like, hey, not all leads have a different value. Yeah. Kind of like this, like if you just go to step 3, for example, just to kind of give it a roadmap. I mean, is it, I guess, 3/5 as good, or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think the answer is, what I'm describing here isn't an absolute process. I think it's a refinement process. And any data that you're giving, so I think the short answer is any data that you're giving the system outside of the click and that initial conversion that you're tracking is extremely valuable. So yeah, sorry, go ahead. I know, Joe, you had your hand raised.
No, finish your point and I'll ask my question.
Yeah. So again, I think it's a relatively, it's a short answer. It's any sort of post-conversion data that you can give the system is going to improve performance. And it's a sliding scale. So, if you give it one data point after that conversion action, whether that's a call or they filled out a lead form, if you can give the system one more data point, that's going to improve performance. If you can give it 2 more data points, that's going to improve performance even more, with the holy grail being, we've confirmed that this specific customer signed a $10,000 contract. So it's, again, I think this is something where you can start small, right? Like if you're like, okay, we're going to just focus on working with our partners to get that one extra data point after the thing that we're tracking automatically in Google Ads, that's a great start. And if we can see performance gains because we're feeding the system that one extra data point, maybe that can snowball into, assigning more resources to add more detail to what we're providing Google Ads, and maybe a couple other journey steps after they've completed that conversion action, which likely comes from the sales team. So go ahead, Joe.
So for our business, we help franchise brands find new franchisees. So so in our the subset, there's people that start businesses, and then there's people that like to look at businesses but don't necessarily do anything, right? And so a buyer is not a subset of the lead any more than if you look at NASCAR, Daytona 500, that the driver is a subset of the people in the stands. They're spectators, they're drivers, right? So for us, you'd have the leads, and we're gonna get a lot of spectators in that. A qualified lead for us is anything that's closable, whether they close it or not. They just might buy better business because it's a better fit from their perspective, whether or not they're fit from our client. So we would be focused on that qualified lead. So if we get 100 leads, we would expect somewhere maybe 6 to 8 be qualified and engaged, right? How many data points do you need to hone in on that qualified lead that it would make a difference in the algorithm? John, I know, John, you and I talked about like about 100 at some point, maybe being the magic number. But is there what's a significant enough number that would actually alter the algorithm and help them zone?
I think one, to be honest.
Okay.
So let's think about it. So I don't want to get too technical, but every time someone searches a term, right? And I'll use like t-shirts, right? Because it's just an easy example. So let's say someone Googles a black t-shirt and they're going to see 100 ads from Nike, Nordstrom's, whatever. Each one of those accounts has an algorithm that is analyzing that specific customer's attributes. So that customer inherently has thousands of data points associated with him or her automatically, right? Just by virtue of being a citizen of the internet, right? Like we've got their web history a lot. We've got their location, most likely, gender, their YouTube viewing habits. So there are a lot of data points built into the individual already. So the system is already analyzing that kind of in a black box, constellation of data points, picking out which ones are the most relevant. So it's already doing that automatically. So this process is really all we're trying to do is say, if someone completed a lead, let's assign that lead, and this is just made up a $5 value. And then the qualified lead, let's give that a $10 value. And what that does is it tells the system that that someone who already has thousands of data points associated with he or she, going from leads to qualified leads is more valuable. So basically what that does is it creates a subsection of those existing data points and says, okay, here's all of the data points of customers that filled out a lead form. And then maybe, 50% of those customers turned into qualified leads. We're just going to filter out maybe 50% of what those customer attributes are and say, okay, these are the 50% that represent a customer who is a qualified lead. So that simple addition of that one more action that we're tracking, think of it as a filtering system of existing data points.
Yeah.
And less of we need to add a billion data points on top of it. It's just a way to narrow down the signals that already exist. Does that make sense?
Okay. And then what form do you need the information in that would make a difference?
So there's a standard. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do this depending on the technical setup. So I think the easiest way to do this is Salesforce integrates directly with Google Ads. So you can basically say, connect to Salesforce, pull in my existing milestones, will automatically create conversion events out of those milestones. And most or a lot of Salesforce partners already have.
Our clients wouldn't be on Salesforce. That there's a proprietary franchise specialty CRM. So John, would it be a spreadsheet?
So yeah, that would be the other option. So you could do like a Zapier hookup. Some of our clients do that, where it's basically like a Rosetta Stone middleman software that can pull from whatever database that they're using and link it directly to Google Ads. Or there's just a very standard Google Sheets template that you can sync however you want from whatever database you're using. So in your case, Joe, if like really the only filter that you're applying is like, is this a client that we want to pass on? Like, this is a good lead or a bad lead? We would just take the date that happened. If there was like a marginal value assigned to that, which we do recommend to differentiate it between a good lead, again, would be like $10, and a regular lead just from a form fill would be $5 because we want to give it more value. That's really it. So all you would have to do is say, I have my list of customers in the back end, and I've already segmented who those good leads are. Let's populate this Google spreadsheet with the good leads, and then we sync that back to Google Ads, and it happens automatically. Now, that being said, there is a little bit of technical setup if it doesn't already exist. and this is technical, but it's probably important. Every time a click happens, there's an alphanumeric string that's attached to that click to give it a unique identifier. And for this to work properly, in most cases, we have to install just a little snippet of code on the website that's capturing the leads to associate that alphanumeric string with the data entry that you guys are seeing in the back end, just as a matching string from whatever you're looking at with like name, email, however they're submitting data, just to link it back to Google Ads. So on that piece, like Google has resources that, again, because John and Webconsuls are part of our program, you guys get access to a lot of our top tier tech support. So if you guys have, big clients that are interested in exploring this and need a little bit of technical help, like on the coding side, that's where you can pull us in and we can basically walk them through the whole process.
Okay. So John, I don't want to down John. So I think this makes sense. We just have to add that to our protocols now and be able to gather the information, our meeting protocols, and gather the information once a month and feed it to you. So we'll talk about what you need, how you need, and we'll work it into our meeting protocols.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think, there are a lot of different routes to it. I mean, CallRail is also kind of something you can just kind of plug in, so to speak, or integrate. But really, it's more just that it's done, I guess, because like I think about it as just sort of pointing it in the right direction. And if we don't qualify leads or give some kind of indication of value differences, it tends to just go after, like, hammer the bad leads, basically, because it has no roadmap to identify what is valuable. So really, like Isaac said, really just even one qualified lead or data point kind of at least orients it correctly, like, hey, there is not all leads are the same value. So yeah, we can discuss that and go over it. And this is just kind of like random and out there, but I wanted to throw it out there, I guess, just for this conversation. Like, it's really important to do this now. It is definitely the future. And Isaac, this is kind of a question / statement, I guess, because it's just something I've thought about recently. But one of the reasons I think this is going to be really powerful is the algorithm can see all these data points, and kind of with the privacy stuff that's going on right now, like, I can't. And that's what Facebook is kind of going through right now with the iOS update, is they're pulling all of the good targeting options away, basically. Like, we can't see them anymore. And I think so not only will this kind of generate more revenue and stuff like that, but for me, it's kind of a hedge against the privacy stuff that's going on right now, because, it's fine for the algorithm to see all this, But,
yeah, and I think just to piggyback on top of that, so Google has rolled out what we call smart bidding, and it's been a really big push over the past year or two. And smart bidding, I think, if you're familiar with how Google Ads used to work, where you're setting individual keyword bids for what you think are your high value keywords, and you say, okay, I'm willing to pay up to this much for that keyword. That system has gone away for a lot of the reasons that John has talked about. But I think the main benefit is bidding for individual keywords is basically bidding for averages. So when I talked about every single person has a unique set of data points associated with them, if you have a keyword CPC limit, the system can't bid higher for high value customers. So you're bidding to an average, which is not the most efficient way to spend for Google Ads, because you could be excluding some high value customers that you may have to pay a little bit more for a click to acquire, but it's worth it because the system has the data to say this customer individually in this moment has data points associated with him or that are analogous to customers that have converted all the way through the closed deal in the past. So it's worth paying $2 instead of $1 for that customer, because that could be the difference of $5,000 on a closed deal for a high value versus a low value customer. So the system basically can make those predictions in real time and scale the bids up and down. And you can still put in controls over like how much you want to spend or how much ROI you want to require the system, which will create some limits on how much it can spend. But you do want it to have the flexibility to basically go after anybody, anywhere who is predicted to be that high value customer that's going to close the deal versus someone who just clicked on the ad and didn't, maybe they were, the person in the crowd for NASCAR, right? So I think all of that to be said, like smart bidding is a requirement for this whole system to work properly, because manual bidding, kind of the bidding in the past, isn't making those types of predictions and is unable to learn from the data that you're feeding it. So again, there are a lot of controls that you can put in place that John and his team are very savvy with. So I think the risk of everything that I'm talking about here is close to zero. I've only ever seen this improve performance.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. That was really it. I mean, this is kind of the sophistication curve, right? So I think what we're talking about here is we're trying to get you guys at the bare minimum from optimizing to leads to optimizing to qualified leads. I think eventually, if we can get to the level of sophistication where we're optimizing to close deals, that's even probably the second best. I'd say the clients that I have that are doing this really, really well, 98% of them are bidding to close deals and not to lifetime value. That being said, there are some use cases where, let's say I had a client last year that was a retirement home community, right? So they're getting leads and they might not see the fruition of that for 10 years until that person retires and decides to enter the community. So in that case, we decided to put placeholder values on certain conversion actions, like the closest one that we could optimize to within 90 days. That was the strongest predictor of whether or not they were going to sign a contract and spend $10,000, $20,000 in 5 years. So the system, it doesn't have to be perfect. We can refine these. We can add placeholder values if we don't expect that true value to happen immediately. Looking at like average lifetime value for a customer can be a good way to fill in some of that data and still teach the system what the high value customers are, even though maybe we haven't seen that revenue in our bottom line quite yet. So I think this is highly it differentiates by client. So I think we can help figure out what the best strategy is in partnership with John and your teams to say, like, okay, what is a reasonable conversion action? How long does it take for this revenue to hit? Is that something we can reasonably optimize to? If not, let's figure out the second best thing.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that's really all I had. I didn't want to get too in the weeds on the technical side, but it sounds like we're all on the same page. I think, next steps is just figuring out what is the easiest, but also the most repeatable way to get that data from your system back into Google Ads. And there's a lot of different options that we can look at. It sounds like the spreadsheet option is going to be the most feasible. I would highly recommend, there's ways that we can help you guys write a very basic script in Google Sheets to pull that from whatever database that you're getting so it can automatically update so you guys aren't having to do it manually. We've done that for clients, and I think that helps a lot if we can automate it in some way. So I think we can probably address that on a case-by-case basis with John as you guys are working through those processes.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to need to run. Thank you very much, gentlemen. John, when Steve gets back, let's figure out the best way to implement.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody. It's nice meeting everybody.
Thanks. Awesome.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Thank you, Kangaroo
Yeah,
guy.
John, Jeremy, any other questions before we hop off, or are we feeling good?
No, I think it's good overall. Nothing from my end. If Jeremy or Nick or anyone has any questions, just jump in. To me, I wanted to go over it to get kind of a general understanding of it, but also because the businesses that are embracing it now, it's important now. It will improve performance now. It has, like Isaac said, I've never seen it do anything but just increase leads and decrease cost per lead. But I also think it's really important because about a year from now, when this is sort of the standard, it is now to a degree, but if the businesses that don't embrace it will have no idea where the good leads are going. That's kind of something I've thought about, because nobody's going to tell you that the people that did embrace it went in and cherry picked out all the qualified leads, so they'll be bidding and stuff, and there will just be less of that in there. So I think it's beneficial now, and justifies the work needed to implement it all now. But a year from now, it'll basically be a requirement, just to generate anything at all, most likely. So
yeah, and I would think of this really as part of your marketing tech stack. Like, this is as important as, the email platform that you're using, your marketing automation platform, your CRM. Like, I wouldn't see this as like an optional additive thing, like John mentioned. Like, this really is something that, 10 years ago, if people were getting out of marketing automation platforms or email marketing platforms, and now you have to do that, right? And it's very scalable and it's easy to execute. This is that, and it will be that even on an increasing basis in the future. So again, investing in this setup initially will for sure require some thought investment and some time investment, but it will have exponential returns down the road and help you differentiate from your customers, because if you get this implemented, your competitors might be spending on those keywords and those spectators, and you've started to not spend on those spectators, so you'll get smarter and smarter. I think the other thing I really like to highlight is that this compounds. Like, the algorithms compound. It learns on itself over and over and over and over again. So the kind of opportunity cost for not doing this now is 3 years from now, even if you do it, a year from now, you missed a year of learning. So, and your competitors might have had that year of learning already, and that is going to make a huge difference. Again, the systems get smarter and smarter the more you have them active, but they need to learn. So the earlier that you can get on this, the smarter it will be in 5 years. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Well, this is really first a question for John, so I don't get myself in trouble here, but he hears this from me a lot. John, is this the appropriate time to talk to somebody with Google about sort of the problems that our field faces that's unique to us? Not that you don't talk about it, but I'm wondering if Isaac's even aware, from a legit script perspective, kind of the plaguing issues of abuse in Google Ads in general. And secondly, just great presentation. And John's been trying to push us as an organization to feed this sort of qualified lead information via call rail back into Google Ads. So we're kind of dipping our toes in it. So thanks for your time, Isaac.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm happy. I got a little bit of extra time. So if there were like industry specific stuff that you wanted to chat through, I can't guarantee I'll have all the answers off the top of my head, but I'll probably have some of them.
Okay. Well, and I've dealt with previously Connor on this a little bit. So Nick, I've primarily discussed this with another rep. They have kind of slightly different roles, but yeah. So Isaac, just in general, and I think we probably discussed this like some, but it's a brand name like issue with treatment centers. So just kind of real quick bird's eye view thing. Addiction treatment or behavioral health in general got really, really sketchy like 5 years ago or something like that. It just, pretty much amounts to human trafficking. Really, it got pretty nasty, some of it. So Google paused any addiction related ads. From what I can tell, they kind of did it in a keyword match type way. If it included rehab, addiction, stuff like that. Paused them until a certification process could be implemented. That certification process became legit script. You go through a round of stuff with them. It's a bit of an experiment, that process right now, but I think overall they do a decent job. And then after that, you get Google certified to be able to run them. I just mentioned that because they're doing all this to try to make sure that all of the sketchy stuff doesn't happen, and they're legitimate treatment centers. There are a lot of people that are just referral based. People is just a guy with an iPhone, basically. So like, you can't bid on addiction related terms unless you have the certification. However, somehow people are like, there's like some like weird loophole. It always has a subdomain. It's always on mobile. And it's basically like when someone Googles, a treatment center name, this false advertiser shows up. So kind of once it's whittled down, I guess the issue is a broad match keyword, or like if we're using broad match keywords, the treatment center name is considered an addiction term. So I can use the keyword, like drug rehab and, Whispering Pines Treatment Center, or, whatever the case may be. It's like, oh, well, that's a treatment center. So that is an addiction related term, and yada, yada, and we'll show your ad. However, that doesn't seem to apply to these advertisers. Like, they can bid on those. It's basically like it's considered addiction related with kind of the match type piece of it, but not with the certification piece. And kind of what's ended up happening with that is a lot of these people are bidding on, like say Cumberland Heights, Newfound Life. They're bidding on all these names, and it's not. I do want to specify too. It's not just something that's like, siphoning leads off or an annoyance or something. It is that, but we have like proof of people calling these places pretending to be the place, and getting these people down to Florida or wherever it is. They have a hard experience. Like, it's just, it really is like, pretty bad.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the.
Yeah. In conclusion, and apologize, Jeremy. I'm sure you're not related to this field, I'm assuming, but thanks for letting me say my piece.
No, I am, Nick.
Oh, great. Well, I hope you feel strongly like I do about how much.
I do.
Okay. So, Isaac, I just want to say in conclusion, I recognize this probably isn't your job. And again, your presentation was very helpful. Terrific. But, LegitScript was created in support of this not happening. Right. And so what John and what I get animated about, and John hears the most of it from me, probably not that it's his fault, but he's like the guy that I can talk to about it, that understands what's happening along with myself and many others, that it just seems to be that the solution that Google petitioned LegitScript to make just isn't working, period. Right? Because the violations just continue to occur where people are able to apply AdWords that are inappropriate, even though they're certified. And so those of us that are paying and supporting this program, and you see what I'm saying? It's like, this is crappy. That's crummy. And so I wish that I wish that we could get this attended to from a high level, perhaps from Google. And I can go ahead and say, John works with a lot of NAATP members, which is our trade organization, about 1,000 providers in this country. And it's not just a problem for just our organization here in Tennessee. It's nationwide. Hazel and Betty Ford, Karen. Everybody's experiencing this, and there's frustration at the trade organization level. So thank you for allowing me to bend an ear to a Google employee.
No worries. So I just want to repeat back what I'm hearing, just so I make sure I've got my head wrapped around it, so I can try to escalate this, because this does sound like it is circumvention, which should not be allowed. So obviously there is a certification process needed for a lot of sensitive verticals. That's true for gambling, like a lot of different stuff. So what I'm hearing is that there's some way that sort of non-legit third parties are being able to bid on keywords that legitimate organizations are prevented from being bidded on based on the certification limitations, and somehow routing those leads to non-legit treatment centers as kind of a scam. Am I interpreting that correctly?
So for the most part, so there is the certification, like you mentioned. I think the issue is that, and the certification, just to kind of put it to, is like thousands of dollars. Like this, this process they go through is very extensive and expensive. So kind of once you're in the door and once you're certified, you have access to like the addiction terms or what,
I understand.
kind of like
they are getting certified, but they are using that maliciously to siphon leads away from legit treatment centers.
Correct. Like, as an example for us is like people are buying, for example, our organization is called Cumberland Heights Foundation, Inc., but people know us doing business as Cumberland Heights. And so what we're noticing is people are just buying those AdWords as related to us in our geo-fenced area, which is a clear violation of, I believe, John, the LegitScript rules, right? This is what it was supposed to prevent. Like, hey, you're taking advantage of this system So yeah, it's just
Yeah.
not.
It's a two-pronged problem, though. There are people that are in the door, like
Right.
in legit script, bidding on other people's names, which is, I mean, just to be frank, like kind of a Google thing, but to me, mostly a legit script, kind of industry.
Sure.
The other problem is people that are not legit script certified. The circumvention piece is always on mobile, and it always uses a subdomain. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I've just noticed it. It's like 30 out of 30. Just rehab dot. It's always some cheesy, like names like. I don't know how to describe it or can't think of an example right now, but and I can send an email kind of illustrating this because we have screenshots, recordings, all kinds of stuff. But basically, if they haven't gotten the certification, it does an excellent job of preventing them from bidding on any kind of addiction related terms, direct addiction related terms. However, the like name brand or kind of brand searches still seem to be accessible through this kind of mobile subdomain type loophole. And the issue though is that they hammer it, like that's all of these places that they don't have a location, they don't have an office, they can't achieve anything organically, right? Because they want to hide basically. So they're just really bidding a lot on it, which kind of, not to get too deep into it, but that kind of makes it drives up the cost of like us trying to like defend ourselves and stuff like that. And ultimately, like I know that sounds extreme, but like it is like ultimately killing people. I know that sounds like kind of crazy, but it does. Like they end up at these places that aren't treatment centers at all, that like pay people to use drugs again so they can go back through the system. Like it's really bad stuff. And the only way they're doing it is this brand search piece. Because, like I said, they don't have a Google business. They don't have any like content, like nothing basically. So that's just, and I don't want to hammer it too much.
Yeah.
Pick up the call. That's
John's a
pretty
good
much it.
resource, Isaac, right? He has a lot of, he's right. I mean, it's not just us that he probably has some of this information related to as an example. And I'll just say too, if you need anything by way of me, totally available to talk through, and I would appreciate any kind of like rustling of the leaves you could create.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into this. I think I haven't heard of this specific issue quite in this detail. It is a tricky one. So I think the one that I can address immediately, and I'll look, I'm taking notes and I'll look up, I can talk to, I work in the agency space, but we also have our LCS large clients with specific verticals. So I'll reach out to one of our like healthcare specific teams because I'm sure they've run into this in the past and see what kind of advice and guidance that they can give. I think initially on the branded term thing, I actually have been seeing this a little bit recently, and advertisers have been getting around this with dynamic keyword insertion. So they're not technically bidding on a specific keyword, but they're creating like a variable within the ads account that will grab what that term is and dynamically insert that into the ad. So it looks like they were bidding on that term, but it's sort of a catch-all. And then they'll bid really high to try to get that that match, even on a branded term. So I've seen that actually with one of my agency partners. They had trademark terms, but they had some online only competitors that were using dynamic keyword insertion to bid on their branded terms. And our system wasn't catching it because they technically weren't bidding directly on the branded terms or violating any trademarks. Now, the good news is as soon as we caught that, we submitted that to our trust and safety team and they immediately blacklisted them from doing that. So I think on that side, it may be a question of scale. So like, I think if you guys see examples of that happening on a specific branded term that you have trademark authority over, please send that to me right away with a screenshot and I could submit that to our trust and safety team. That is on an account by account basis. So one thing I do have to look into is, can we do that at scale if there's like a list of known violators who are doing that? That's hard to prove unless we have screenshots and specific collateral that we can submit to our trust and safety team, because like our team is like sales and strategy and we have no control over, blacklisting accounts for certain things. So any ammo you can send.
This trust and safety team, is that something that's accessible only via you and I guess via me to John to you?
I believe there's an external form. So let me because there is a form. I'm pretty sure it's internal and external. So I'll send that link to you. So I think, yeah, it should be something that you could submit on your own. So if you see it in real time and don't want to go through all the hoops to like get to me through John, I believe you can send that directly to our trust and safety team. I think I'll get a faster response in a lot of cases because I can use some of Google's proprietary, data capturing tools to get that to them. But you should be able to do it. So let me take that as an important follow-up, because I definitely understand the severity of the issue. It's not just a business competitive thing. It's a people safety thing. So let me reach out to our healthcare verticals to see if they have any specific advice. I'll talk to our trust and safety team. But again, any sort of ammo that you guys can send me as an example of this happening and kind of players in the space that are a little bit shady, that'll help me escalate this quickly.
Okay. Yeah, I think we just personally, I'd rather go the through you route and send you all the ammo we have, because we have quite a bit. I mean, it's and also just kind of maybe walking through or giving proof that it's as harmful as we said it is, because just kind of at first glance it seems like just kind of they're bidding on our name, business type complaint, but it goes pretty deep, and it's we have a lot of proof. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think one request too is if you guys see those ads, right click on it on the link and click copy link and save that, because that'll actually give you like a specific URL of the ad within the search results and not just the landing page. So that helps me escalate it to give the team context of like where it was placed, why it was placed in certain search results. They can look that up in the back end. I think the other thing I would ask too is, if this is something that is happening on specific brand related keywords, just do me the favor and like make sure that those specific phrases are trademarked fully, and I can look it up in the back end too if there's any you're not sure about, because there may be some tightening up that we can do of submitting certain variations or anything that should be branded for the organization. That may help fill some holes too if there's some gaps in again, variations of certain branded keywords.
Okay.
I've got a hard stop, but I appreciate it, Isaac. Nice to know you. John, thanks for letting me ask this question again. And Jeremy, nice to know you, man. All right.
Thanks everyone. Bye.